Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to tackle a huge foundational idea in economics. We're going to see how one brilliant challenge revealed why markets, well, they're never as perfect as we once thought. And it all boils down to one thing: information.
For decades, one powerful assumption really shaped our whole understanding of the economy. But what if that core idea was just fundamentally flawed? We're going to explore how a single crack in that foundation, well, it changed everything. Okay, so let's start with the old model. For a long time, the dominant theory was built on this, idealized world. This was the world of so-called perfect markets, where everything was in balance and everyone acted with perfect knowledge. Sounds nice, right?
So this classical view imagined a world where everybody had full, totally free access to all information. And this led to this beautiful, clean model of market equilibrium. But it completely missed the messy complexities of the real world, where information is almost always incomplete, it's spread unevenly, and sometimes, let's be honest, it's even used to game the system.
But then, a revolution started brewing. In the 20th century, a group of economists began to systematically just dismantle this elegant but pretty fragile idea. And right at the front of this charge was a Nobel laureate named Joseph Stiglitz.
Now, Stiglitz, along with his colleagues George Akerlof and Michael Spence, they basically created a whole new field, the economics of information. Their big argument was that information isn't just some given, it's a crucial variable that fundamentally changes how markets actually behave.
And here's their core insight, which is so important. Information isn't just a passive piece of the puzzle. They showed it's what economists call an endogenous variable. Basically, that just means it's a dynamic force that actively shapes the incentives people have, the outcomes they get, and the very structure of our economic institutions. It's not just part of the game, it changes the game itself. Okay, now let's get to their most powerful weapon. It came in the form of this brilliant logic puzzle known as the Grossman-Stiglitz paradox, and it completely turned the old model on its head. This is where it gets really fun. Let's just break this down for a second, because this is where the old model really starts to fall apart. Just think about it. If the market price of, say, a stock already reflects every single piece of available information, why on earth would you spend your time and money researching that stock? You wouldn't get any edge, right?
And here is the beautiful contradiction at the heart of the old model. Step 1, assume prices are perfectly efficient. Step 2, well, then nobody has any reason to go out and gather information. Step 3, but wait, if nobody is gathering information, how in the world can prices possibly reflect that information? The answer? They can't. It's a perfect catch-22.
So, what the Grossman-Stiglitz paradox proved with just pure logic is that the old model of a perfect, informationally efficient market, it's built on a logical impossibility. The entire theory just collapses under its own weight.
So, what does this actually look like in the real world? Because once you understand that information isn't perfect, you start seeing the effects everywhere. We're going to take a look at what happens when information is unequal, using Nigeria's economy as a really powerful case study.
And this brings us to the core concept of Stiglitz's work, information asymmetry. It sounds complicated, but it's actually super simple. It's just a situation where one side of a deal knows more than the other. And that imbalance of knowledge, it creates a huge imbalance of power. This asymmetry leads to two key problems that pop up all the time. First, you've got adverse selection. That happens before a deal is even made. Think about insurance. If a company can't tell careful drivers from reckless ones, their prices might only attract the reckless ones, the very people they don't want. Then there's moral hazard, and that happens after a deal is made. Once you're fully insured, you might drive a little faster, right? Because you know you're covered.
In Nigeria's credit markets, this is a massive hurdle. Lenders often just can't accurately tell the difference between a high-risk and a low-risk borrower. So what happens? A lot of really promising small and medium-sized businesses get locked out from the loans they need to grow, all because the banks can't properly assess the true risk. You see it in agriculture, too. There's this one story where middlemen literally blocked direct access between producers of a food called gari and their buyers. They hoarded all the info about the real market prices and just fed false, low prices to the farmers. The result? A market glut and the total collapse of a once thriving local industry, all because information was weaponized.
And this problem, it scales all the way to the top. Even the Nigerian government faces a huge information gap with its own vital oil sector. They often struggle to get a clear picture of how much money is really being generated and where it's going, which makes effective planning, well, nearly impossible. And the whole problem gets so much worse when the official data itself is unreliable. I mean, as this quote says, when the information you're given just doesn't line up with reality, everyone, from entrepreneurs to policymakers, is forced to make these critical decisions pretty much in the dark.
The ripple effects here are just enormous. You've got entrepreneurs who can't get reliable data to plan their business, farmers who can't get basic weather forecasts, small investors who flee the stock market because they think it's rigged by insider trading, and millions of people in the informal economy who are totally cut off from credit. You see, information asymmetry isn't just a theory. It's a powerful force that crushes growth and funnels wealth into the hands of a few.
Okay, so let's bring this all together. Why is this whole academic debate about information so incredibly important for understanding how economies work in the real world today?
It matters, because when policymakers base their decisions on a flawed model of the world, the consequences can be absolutely devastating. Believing in a perfect market that doesn't actually exist can lead to policies that don't just fail to fix real problems, they can actually make them worse.
This timeline really puts it all into perspective. I mean, you have the old theories of perfect markets that were dominant for years, but even after the Grossman-Stiglitz paradox completely blew up the logic in 1980, policies based on those old, flawed assumptions, like the structural adjustment programs, were put into place in countries like Nigeria. The source we're looking at here suggests this isn't a coincidence, noting that this period lines up with a long downward spiral for the Nigerian economy.
And that leaves us with one last, crucial question to think about. Understanding that information is power is really just the first step. The next, and maybe the most important, is to ask who controls that information, who benefits when it's uneven, and what can we actually do to create a more transparent and more equitable economic landscape for everyone? That is the real challenge.